which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Public comments?
Hi, Steve Nash, member of the public. Just dropped off my property taxes today, so that always fires me up a little bit. And I know that everybody gets a little bit tired when I harp about accountability. But at the very least, you know, when I look at what Meyer, Hoffman, McCann, you know, did to the city, we had any number of funds that were running negative balances. And I sat up here for many meetings and listened to their representative tell us that everything was okay. Obviously, everything wasn't okay. So I don't know how interested the city is in pursuing litigation against Meyer Hoffman, but I, for one, would certainly support any action to hold them, to at least hold them accountable. So thank you, that's all.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Mr. Labor.
Yes, going by this email that Mr. Willio sent out yesterday, and he referred, one of the areas was prior period adjustments. And it states that the auditors have confirmed management partners' previous findings, etc. I was wondering if they're going to be multiple years, prior years restated, the city's financials. That was unclear to me. And also, since management partners' results found that there was a material change in the city's operations in a negative way, the memo from Standard & Poor's indicated that should the new auditor make a material financial statement, this would be a multiple notch downgrade. So it seems like that's a foregone conclusion. And I was just curious to see what the city's response to that would be. Additionally, I'm very pleased that the auditors independently found problems, not found problems, but they saw enough to go after the golf course finally after many years. One of the additional things I'm interested in is the city's unilateral decision to provide free water to the golf course, subsidize potable water, non-potable water to the golf course that violates every accounting principle. It's supposed to be an enterprise fund. The city provided hookups and free water to the golf course. It's done so for many months. The golf course is not in charge for this. And I'd like to know if the auditors are looking into this as part of their audit, and if not, why not? And that needs to be fixed. It is an enterprise fund. They need to be charged the full cost of providing that water. No more gimmies. And it doesn't make sense to me that the city is in the middle of a PR blitz to increase water rates substantially, which I believe they need to do. Why would you do this? Give free water, that's saying you have enough. If you can subsidize water to the golf course, then you don't need a big rate increase. That's just simple logic. So why do stupid things like this? So I want the auditors to look at this, if possible, and write this. And the last thing I have to say is about, I want to know if the auditors have looked at any of the city's 3 swap deals with Royal Bank of Canada. I mean, they're on the hook for several, if those deals were to wind down because of material financial downgrades of the general fund and the sewer funds, the city would be on the hook for several millions of dollars. So I'd like to know, not only that, even if that didn't happen, the city, just from a fairness point of view, the city is paying Royal Bank of Canada a fortune each year compared to what they get in return. And I was wondering if these deals could be unraveled somehow, and something that the city's financial advisors could look at, because that's a big issue. Okay, those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir, Mr. Stein.
I have several concerns. One concern is the fact that the wastewater fund is not being paid for the feeder stock from the water fund for the GREAT program. Again, these two enterprise funds are separate. and distinct entities, and feeder stock should not be given away free to the water fund, especially if the residential ratepayers are subsidizing the whole thing in the first place. The residential ratepayers have been paying for years on the debt service to the GRAPE program, not getting any immediate benefits nor any foreseeable benefits in the next 5 years. So I don't think the residential ratepayers should be subsidizing the GRAPE program anymore, but that should be borne upon the users of the GRAPE program. I'm concerned about the fact that I've been asking questions on the Social Security tax liability pertaining to LBEs. This should be a figure that is known and given to the public as part of the June 30th financial liability. It's a known number. The city attorney's office is refusing to disclose that number. City staff is refusing to disclose that number. I think that number is known by the auditors and should be disclosed to the public. Asking to see documentation on these numbers and not being provided to me. I'm looking at the cash balances. We have over $15 million of negative cash balances over 20 funds going back to June 30th. I'm trying to look at these documents, and staff has been very reluctant in providing these documents to me in a timely fashion. I've asked for these documents over 2 months ago, and the documents still aren't being released fully in disclosure. I'm asking for documentation on these same funds going from May through October of this year to see what transfers are taking place. Again, those documents are not being made available to me. I noticed that June 30th, 2012, June 30th, 2012, large transfers were made from liabilities to cash balances, causing great negative deficits in these balances. Staff has not given me the entries for those transactions. We transfer over almost $15 million in negative cash, and there's no documentation to this. We have audit fees being paid out of non-general fund services. Again, my concern here is there seems to be a lot of activity taking place that doesn't be in compliance or conform to general accepted accounting practices. I applaud the fact we're going to have a new auditing system put in place, but these questions have been going on for years, and staff is still not complying with the law by making the documents available to the public within time frames specified in the law. And this, to me, is a violation of city policy and state law, and the city does not seem to be rectifying the situation in a timely fashion. I'd like to have reserve additional comments to items that we proceed on the agenda, so I can comment on those as well later on.
So noted. Any other public comments? Mr. Velazquez?
I actually have a question for Mr. Nyhoff. I'm just going through the minutes before they get approved here. It states here, Mr. Nyhoff noted the city is doing well with regard to sales tax revenues. Could he kind of clarify specifically what he meant by that in numbers?
I'll go ahead and let him answer this. It's going to be very brief
That's fine.
because of the Brown Act. It was not an agendized item. We really can't have a detailed discussion. So, Mr. Nyhoff, real briefly.
Certainly, first of all, it's December 15, and welcome everybody to come on at 5 o'clock to the council meeting, and we'll talk about the budget status. And I think a recent update is we're hitting our projections, which are increased numbers, which I think we estimated sales tax would be up 2% or 3%, and we're hitting those numbers.
What date was that again, please?
Pardon?
You mentioned the date.
Well, next Tuesday night, council meeting. We're going to start at 5 o'clock, and we're going to talk about some of the options. And is our last report online when we talk about sales tax? And
That was November 17th.
okay, so yeah, that's online. I can show you that. The bottom line to it is we're meeting projections, which is we are seeing improvement in sales tax, not much above what we actually projected them to be in the budget.
Thanks, sir. Any other public comments?
Just a question.
Yes, sir.
Last night, the council discussed a number of issues. One was landscape maintenance districts, and the other was the internal independent auditor. Now that it's gone to the council, is there any need to refresh any notes here about what we were recommending, or is it something that this task force won't be reviewing again?
I don't have an answer to that. I would think we will probably look at it again if it's brought back to us, but generally, once it's referred to council, it's in their court. You know, we will not bring it back there. Hey, Brent, no? You had that pensive look like you wanted to say something.
You were looking at Cassidy.
Okay, with that, we will move to review and approval of the minutes. Councilmember, have you had a chance to look at the minutes? Okay. We will accept the minutes as presented. We'll go to update on the city's annual financial audit, presentation of the city's independent auditor.
All right, good morning, Mr. Chairman. The item before you is an audit update. So our new audit firm, which City Council approved on September 1st, Eie+payne, began their interim field work with the city late September and has progressed since then. They've come across a whole scope of issues which is going to cause a delay in the audit, and they will be presenting these issues before you.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Mr. MacDonald and Mr. Perello, members of the public, members of the city staff. My name is Eie+payne, and I am the engagement partner for the audit for the city of Oxnard, and probably saw me at that presentation back in September. I have with me today Don Ecker. He is a consultant to Eie+payne. He takes care of us as far as our risk management and also our client satisfaction program. So both of us will be presenting today. I will go over the audit progress report. As you all know, we started our audit in September, and it's now December. When we did our presentation back in September, we said we should be done by December, and we are not. That's the first thing I want to say, and then I'll explain the rest in this presentation. Don will take over on page 9, because I can't talk very much. So, as you can see in this slide, we started our interim field work back in September, a few weeks after our presentation. I think our presentation was September 1 or September 2. We came down here, we had a 4-day interim field work, our staff were here, they gathered information, and pretty much very quickly we found out that we needed a lot more work to get done with the audit. We had a meeting with the Oxnard team, and that included Greg, Maria, Scott, your top executives, Joseph, Christine, and including our interim city attorney. On October 21, and we presented to them our findings and recommendations. We had another meeting on November 3rd, and they pretty much agreed to proceed with the recommendations that we had at that first meeting. Gave them another progress report on December 2nd, and that's December we started, no, actually November we came back with more procedures, and we presented a progress report on December 2nd. December 3rd, your assistant city manager, Maria, gave an update to Greg, and Greg updated the city council members on December 7th as far as we know. And today, we have this meeting. So since our presentation back in September, we have been working with your team, with the City of Oxnard team, to be able to perform the audit, and we have been preparing for the audit, and we have started the audit field work, but it will take a little bit more time than we had anticipated, and it will probably end up to be in February is when we're gonna do that.
Is that a definite, is that it looks like, well, that's the earliest, but it may not get done until July, or can you give us a better sense? If you don't mind my interrupting, maybe I should have done that.
Probably shouldn't have, but that's okay.
Well, we'll get
I was also
to
gonna
it.
ask whether Greg ever updated the council really, but I didn't want to say
Well,
that.
let's let her continue. I think February is the best estimate at this point. They thought they were gonna be done in December, they didn't make that date, so it's a fluid issue at this point, but they're shooting for February. Is that getting closer?
You know, the other thing I think is important is that, as your new auditors, we sense the frustration of everyone in the room. I mean, from the city manager down and the public. I sat next to Dave because he and I flunked retirement a number of times. But I think it's important that everyone understand that in the finance area, most of the people in this room were not here prior to August. So it's a little bit of a hunting exercise, and I think it's fair to say that the condition of your records is not what everyone would like. And so it's going to take, it's a journey. And we're here to be very, very open with you, but we don't have all the answers today. But we'll happily share with you everything we have as of today.
So after this meeting, we will have the presentation with the city council on December 15th. And we are scheduling every 2 weeks a meeting with the city of Oxnard management team to discuss the progress of the audit. And we will do that until we finish our audit. So we will be updated with more information as we go along. These are the major issues that we have talked to your city management about. Like Don said, when we came in here, Joseph and Christine, people who are in charge of the finance department now, they've been here a month. Maybe they were just ahead of us by a month. And so it is really a difficult audit, to say the least, because the history and the records are missing in some cases, and we were hunting up down information. And they are there, it's just that we need to uncover them. So these are the areas that we will go over, each of these areas as we go with this presentation. And we'll get back to this if you're missing something else. So, trial balance roll forward. This is a major milestone on our part and a part of the finance department, finance team, because when we came in, the financial statement, the trial balance that they provided to us needed a little bit more work. We needed to work on getting the beginning balance of that trial balance to agree with what was reported in the past. So it took us a few weeks.
I would say it
Hundreds
took
of hours.
more than a little work. It took a significant amount of work.
Yes, and Joseph and Christine and their finance department really helped us to get this moving and get this completed. So that is one major milestone that I think we were able to do.
Effectively, if you don't have a roll forward trial balance, you can't begin the audit. So, I mean, that's really, you know, ground zero of starting.
Ground zero, that's right. And so to be able to get that done, that was really good.
The trial balance was not in balance, and so you can't begin account analysis until you know.
So it wasn't in balance, it's not that there was a roll forward.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I'm gonna ask that if we have any questions, they come through the chair so we can maintain some sort of control.
Can you explain what the rollover trial balance issue is?
Roll forward.
Roll forward?
Okay.
It sounds like it's more of fund
Yeah.
balance lacking in balance.
Okay, so the trial balance, when we begin our audit, we get a trial balance from the city or our client, and the beginning fund balance of each of the funds should be in agreement with what was the ending at June 30, 2014, and it wasn't. So adjustments had to be made, and you can't just make an adjustment to plug the number so that it will agree, because you're looking at your current transactions not being reported properly if you have a roll forward issue. So that's what we had to begin with. The beginning balance should tie out to the ending balance last year. And that was a lot of work.
Mr. Chairman, do you mind if I add just a little bit to this? So your closing balance for June 30, 2014, your following day, July 1st, that's supposed to match. We should begin the new fiscal year. Each fund balance has to match. And that wasn't happening. So as the audit transpired, the prior year's audit transpired between July 1st and December of 2014, all those entries that should have been posted to the prior year, there were some errors, posting errors, and issues with that. So it took hundreds of staff hours from finance staff, plus hundreds of hours from the audit staff to get all that reconciled and figure out what happened.
Mr. Chair?
I'm going to Mr. Perello now. Councilman Perello, I'll get back to you.
Does that make you want to go back and look at previous CAFRs?
And that's
Not
part
just-
of the
not
scope
just
of the
year
work.
back, I don't be trusting it, we can probably the state.
Well, by reconciling everything that was out of balance in those years and looking at everything in detail, which the auditors are doing, we'll be able to have a true picture, financial picture of where we are right now. And I don't, even if you want to address the statement of, going back and restating any prior year financial statements.
Definitely, that is a good question. I think it is up to the city to decide whether they want to restate prior period financial statements, the CAFRs themselves. In the current year audit, we will be restating the beginning balance.
Maybe just, again, I don't think I agree with Eden, we don't have all the answers yet. However, if we do a complete balance sheet audit of assets and liabilities, it has to effectively flush through fund balances. So if we know all the assets and the liabilities, at some point in time, we have to put it behind us and move forward. It's my thoughts from a risk perspective that you want to try to tighten up risk at June 30th, 15, because it's already going to be January of 16 here soon. So there's going to be significant internal control comments as we move forward.
Okay. Mr. Molina?
I just was wondering, you've already done a lot of work. Have you ever considered trying to contact any of the people that were in the city? I mean, I understand Mr. Cameron still lives in the area. I mean, maybe they could, in an hour, help save you guys 100 hours of billable time and let you get ahead. I would suggest that maybe you consider that there are people living in the community who might be willing to help you identify where some documents are that you might be looking for. Just
Okay.
a suggestion.
Thank you for the comments.
And if I can comment on
I
that.
have no
Yeah.
comment.
I've asked some of my staff to reach out to some of the prior management, and they have not responded.
Okay.
Well, I'll make one comment from a risk perspective. Prior management signed your representation letter. What'd you get for it?
Thank you for that comment.
Is it, Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Molina?
Is there anything you can do, given that these people signed, I think it's under oath, representation letter, that apparently was not correct? Is there any legal action the city can take against these people?
I don't want to get too deep into the legal part of it now, but we have heard your comments, and legal staff will sit down with the auditors and take a look at future recourse. So-
That'd be great.
Okay, thank you. We can move along, please.
Okay, let's move ahead. Second issue on that list of issues that we identified is the bank reconciliation. When we came in September, we noted, and the city finance department had noted that the bank reconciliations have not been completed since November 2014. So they had to do those bank reconciliations when they arrived in August, September. And as of October 21, they were still having bank reconciliation discrepancies of $125,000. November 9, it was $900,000. December 1, December 7, all of those, it's a moving target. Every time we get a new copy of the bank reconciliation, it is a different number. So we are still continuing our review. I can't really tell you when this is gonna end.
Well, can I make a comment before you have comments
Yes.
from the public? The thing that I think you need to be aware of is
I'm sorry.
our first slide spoke about how much transparency Greg and his staff are trying to do. And we have them on the phone literally weekly and daily saying, okay, we gotta figure this out. So it's a little bit like a needle in the haystack. And everyone is, pushing the pedal to the metal. All the answers aren't there. From an old dog perspective, guys with white hair, when you push the accounting staff too hard, you're gonna get entries that may not have support. So at this point, I think it's wise to support them to get through the swamp. We're not there yet. We are not there. And I can tell you that from Greg down, we're all over these people pretty much on a daily basis. So, I mean, there's no free ride.
Ms. Moon, hang on, Mr. Velasquez had a comment.
I've heard this comment made 3 times already. You don't have the answers. Not all the answers are there. When do you expect to have some concrete answers to some of these problems that we have? Or search that you're going after?
Well, I think the fact that we have the roll forward completed, we are optimistic that the bank reconciliations, Christine, in the next week.
Yes,
But it's, no one is trying to drag this process out. It's just, you'll find out that we have concrete findings so far. So I don't think your statement is correct.
Well, I think the question you asked is when do you have a concrete date that you'll reach a resolution?
No,
I don't think you
our-
can do that because we're still in a state of investigation, so.
Correct.
And Ms. Velasquez, I would say, I think it's unfair to ask him for a drop dead date or a concrete date,
I
but
understand.
to give a generalization, maybe a couple months or, okay. Mr. Molina?
I just wanted to make sure, you said the last time you had a good cash reconciliation was November 2014? Maybe, well, it's for the fiscal policy task force, I guess. Haven't council been receiving reports from the city treasurer? And I know the council members have been asking, do you reconcile cash? And she said yes. I mean, is she reconciling cash, or is she just throwing up a number? I mean, how, do we have any assurance that what she's doing is good? She should be here today to help. I don't want to say this when she's not here, but.
I may have an answer to that, but Joseph can probably tell you a little bit more too. But the treasurer's report is reconciled. The reconciliation is not, that is done by the accounting department. It's a little bit different. It is reconciled to what the general ledger says.
So what does the treasurer reconcile to? The air?
The bank.
Atmosphere?
The bank.
The bank statements.
So she's
Bank
just taking the
statements.
bank statements and not worried about outstanding cash that's available but has been committed? I mean,
And I appreciate that.
That's
I
fine.
want
She's
to-
answering the
Mr.
question.
Stein?
Yeah, so I'm confused here. First of all, you say bank reconciliation. Again, I thought there was only, the treasurer implies only one checking account. So if there's multiple checking accounts, what are you reconciling to? And are the variances positive or negative?
Both.
Both ways, sorry.
So how many checking accounts are there?
I don't think we're limiting it to checking accounts, I think we're limiting it, or focusing on all accounts, be the checking, investment, what have you. I think we're talking in general terms here, would that be an accurate statement?
Yes.
Right.
Well, put it differently, how many bank accounts are there in the city?
I don't think we have that answer for you right now. We'll
Should if they're reconciling cash. I'm sorry,
I-
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry.
I'm just thinking in my brain how many actual bank
I know
reconciliations.
the problem is
we
if they're
looked
not
at.
prepared to have that particular
Yeah, I don't have
bit of
that.
information, they may not have all that.
Well, is it more than 10 or, you know, or less than 10?
It's less than 10.
Thank you.
So, moving on to, it's, as I said here, it's taking a tremendous amount of time from your staff and our staff to bring the bank reconciliation to an acceptable level of materiality so that we can move on. But I think there's a lot of lessons learned already from this process. The first thing, obviously, is that the bank reconciliation needs to be prepared and approved in a timely manner. It's not just the preparation of it, but the reviewing and the approving of it has to be done every month. Internal control needs to be improved through an information technology systems audit. Your staff has indicated their frustration over the HTE system software. And we've had our frustrations with it too, so it is very antiquated. It really needs to be brought to the 21st century. Additional resources are needed to create timely reconciliations and develop consistent accounting practices and procedures. Preparing the bank reconciliation right now takes a long time. And if you have to assign one person to do it, they'll probably do it full-time all the time. Specific procedures are also required related to journal entries entered into cash. They need to be developed and implemented right away. These are immediate things that have to be done. Because we're looking at June 30, 2015, it's already December. Are those bank reconciliations through December being done? Prior period adjustments, we have talked about this a little bit before.
I think it was a question earlier today.
I'm sorry?
That was a question earlier today.
Okay.
During our roll forward process, we had identified prior period adjustments, and we have requested that they be proposed or posted to the general ledger. More will be identified as we continue our audit processes. We are going to be required to communicate this prior period adjustments to the prior year auditor. And in the end, they have to be reported to the California Board of Accountancy.
While you're referring to a current prior auditor, you may also look at the work done to the auditor prior to that, prior to 2012, because of the concerns that firm had with other cities. Just a footnote, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm up. Well, so, I guess the good news and the bad news is that you're not a city of Beaumont or a West Covina or someone like Stockton. And when you see the city of Beaumont actually only passed 4 of the 79 controls, and the city of West Covina only passed 7. The 79 controls is a fairly lengthy list, and what you have already done with management partners and bringing in new staff and new auditors, we think is a significant statement that if the state were to come in. Obviously, you've spent a lot of time and money and energy that, in some of our opinions, people like Beaumont and West Covina may not have done so. So, in any event, you want to be prepared, and we're sensitive to those 79 control points. There is a prior audit adjustment of $89 million in liabilities, multiple liabilities, that will be made this year. That's, we rounded it off to 89 million, that's dollars and cents. Effectively, I'm sorry? Just liabilities that belong on the balance sheet. And I mean, we can, in a future meeting, be prepared to give you much more detail on that. But
Between controllers report.
Right.
And CAFR. Excuse me.
yes,
Yeah,
go ahead.
The reconciling differences between the controllers report and the CAFR, not a $89 million adjustment
okay.
of the CAFR.
Right.
It's the same.
Okay, that's what
So something that was in the controller report that didn't appear in the CAFR, is what you're saying?
Right, that's right, they don't reconcile.
All right, so at least the state knows what the facts are. Okay.
I'm not sure we go that far, but in any event, there's the city would like to have a diagnostic ready on the SCO audit, and we've deferred that until the audit for June 30th of 15 is done as a high priority.
Yes.
What do you mean by diagnosis?
Want to try to have procedures in place that if and when you were ever audited, that you would pass.
And just an observation, I'll make this for Mr. Nyhoff, it sounds like this is more of a software issue than anything else in terms of record keeping and accessibility. I presume we're having discussions with Mr. Brooks about updating, because you're not the only ones that have made these observations about HTE being not a user-friendly system.
Right, right.
Yeah, I think Councilmember MacDonald, you heard a slight recommendation when you received the IT master plan. And I was going to do it again last night when we did the organizational assessment. But we are coming to you in January with a funding recommendation for an ERP system because of this and other issues we've had with getting reliable financial reports from the system that we have.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Stein?
I would suggest to stay away from ERP system because of IT issues. I think you still want to go with a service-based issue for better reliability of technology. ERP systems have certain constraints with memory issues, and based upon my limited experience, ERP systems, while it's new technology, do have technical issues with transference of data over the internet versus a server-based IT system.
Okay,
Just
we'll
to
send
know.
those comments to Mr. Brooks, because that's way beyond my area. Thank you.
So, really, you've, the City of Oxnard to-do list with the management partners and Dave sitting here, it shows the complexity of the challenges that you have. I mean, you had 39 items that you wanted to have completed, and you completed 21 of the 39. There's a tremendous amount of work that needs to be done. And I think the routine reporting that takes place, it has made our job easier, if there is such a statement, had management partners and management not started in this process. But we, as your independent auditors, still have to satisfy ourselves that the progress that you're making relates to the financial statements that we will be opining on. All right, nobody wants to talk about the municipal golf course, right? Just to restate some things that probably most of you know, the deficit through June of 14 was at 4.4 million. It went up to 6.2 million in 15. I am going to start today with meeting interviews with people like Scott, who's in charge of the golf course. I am not going to spend a lot of time talking to the golf course people. Reason being, I don't think there's any controls over there. It's a family-run operation.
Yes.
And you guys are the piggy bank.
Yes.
Thank you.
Finally.
Now, that's my opinion. Golf courses, I've belonged to, I'm embarrassed to tell you, 5 golf courses in my life. All of them, when there's a deficit, the members have to divvy up or they're out. Right now, the city pays the dues in the contributions. However, NGF Consulting said that labor costs are 5% above industry standards and utility costs were 10% above industry standards, and I believe that's before even the water transfer, which could make it even higher. Next one, please. So the cumulative losses from 10 to 13 were 6.8. City contribution was 4.3. Net position 2.5. We are in the process of confirming, but the total losses since 2010 are $10 million, in excess of $10 million. You have, I believe, like a $50 million investment. I don't think anybody in this room was a part of the agreement. I find it interesting that we're going to have significant recommendations. I find it odd where you are the working capital and you don't get a return on your working capital before they get a bonus. I mean, it's just some basics.
Mr. Chair.
We've been told that they do not intend to renew after 2019.
Mr. Lavery?
Yes, I just want to say that these numbers, I don't know if you're aware, there was a refunding, not a refunding, a new.
Refinance?
In 2011, that's ostensibly golf course related, but it's funded from general fund monies. It's paid by the general fund. I don't know if you guys know all that. It's a sordid story where the developer out there, the city used proceeds from a land sale that was not finalized, and the city had to pay back the money, and then most of the proceeds were used to expand the golf course.
So what, a CFD was created?
No, it was a bond finance.
He's talking about.
But it was a land sale proceeds. The proceeds were in escrow. The city foolishly spent the money. The developer backed out and the city had to pay back $20 million, but the city had already spent the money. Most of it went to expand the golf course and build another 18 holes. A debt issue occurred in 2011.
We can get you the details more later, but we've got a
But anyway, that's not
city.
reflected in the golf course numbers, it's reflected in the general fund. So it's what I'm saying is this understated.
The loss.
Yes, it's understated. Plus the free water that the city is providing the golf course is not in here. You say utility cost is 10%.
Right, no,
Yeah.
well, and there needs to be a journal entry made to,
Yeah.
I assume everyone agrees they need to pay for their water. even if it is
I
recycled.
don't think I don't think there's any consensus on that.
Oh, really?
Oh, no. I think it's the opposite in this administration.
Yeah, the council has changed.
Yes, if you go back to prior CAFRs, look at the statement of cash flows for the golf course enterprise fund for the last 5 years. I think you'll start seeing some of the transfers in the statement of cash flow on the golf course enterprise funds and the CAFR. That might give you some information as to the transfers of funds going in and out. The contract's known as Kasdan deal, or Kasdan, was the developer involved. So a quick glance at the CAFRs going back to 2011, I think will give you some insight as to a quick review. Should take you less than 30 minutes, look at those pages to see how the money's flowed in and out of the golf course.
Yeah. You know, golf courses are tough business. I mean,
And we'll have staff to get you a lot, but there's been a switch over from well water to recycled water. There's been a lot of changes in the last year. Was to put in the gas and offer that caused us to buy the property down. The staff will get you all that basic information.
Councilmember, if I could just add that we're going to talk tomorrow, council meeting, we're going to talk about utility rates and water, and we're going to address specifically the water for the golf course.
okay, and then Joseph will get back. So that's really the status on the municipal golf course, and I probably went further than I should, but I'm just giving you a perspective of someone as an outsider, that's all.
And a side note, is your presentation here something we can share electronically if you want a copy of it? I see Mr. Miller.
Mine goes from 12 to 15.
Steve, this is all public, right?
Can you furnish us with a PDF file, what I think the chairman said?
This one's received.
PowerPoints?
I had one quick question on the slide.
I'm sorry?
I had one quick question on the slide.
Sure.
Because our printouts are in black and white, so those red numbers are negative.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
That's the one.
Okay,
So, excuse me, Mr. Chair, just, we're talking about, are we missing a page here? In
Presentation.
the two, did I hear you say we're missing one?
Just in the ones I had to agree. I think everyone else has this.
Well, page 7. 7 is the one that is missing on some of the copies.
Oh, okay. I've got it in mine. So.
Okay, we'll just go make a few and then I'll just pass it on. I'll skip to Louis.
Oh, well,
But
okay.
they're okay with us making this available electronically too, so we'll, if anybody wants a copy, we'll make it available what time.
So, again, deferred compensation fund was not reported in CAFR's 2014. The amount per your general ledger is 19.9 million, and the amount per your third-party administrator is approximately 40 million. And there hasn't been activity reported on HDE since '98, and so it's our strong recommendation that this be reported.
Mr. Chairman, I think what you want to do is go back to the 1997 CAFR. You want to look at the notes from the auditor. You'll notice that he identifies IRC 457 plan, the change in the language. He identifies CASB 32, and how the lawyers and the auditors got together and determined that because the city does not have the authority over that money, it is no longer available for general creditors. What was happening was people, I think they still now, employees have a chance to participate in the 457 plan. It's deducted from their payroll. It's paid over to 3 administrators. They have total authority over that money. The city cannot get that money anymore. So the decision was made that it must not be in the balance sheet. And so at that time, they posted it, they identified it in the footnotes, and they cleared it out. What they did not do, because the staff was concerned, is they kept those numbers in the financial statement because they wanted to make sure that the 3 providers didn't lose the money that the employees had paid. But you don't want to put any additional liability in the CAFR that's not necessary, any more than you would want to. Although after what GASB 64, that may have reversed the trend again. And you may need to, it's a good point, if that's what you're saying. Okay.
We don't have any further comment right now.
Mr. Mosby.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've talked to the auditors about this issue, and I think the real concern that I have is actually there is a fiduciary responsibility of the city.
It's $10 for
To
you.
be sure
Because your video, I'm not charging you, that's a fee.
It's
too much of a fee.
But the city, and there is some possible liability there if the city does not fulfill that responsibility. But the funds are not the city's funds, shouldn't be reported as the assets of the city. I think, and I agree with Mr. Molina, that keeping track of this, reconciling it, routinely reviewing all of those balances with the three providers is really an important function. And it was actually one of the functions that I started because I was concerned that no one knew what the statements were or where they were going or no any reconciliation was performed. So this is an important finding, but it is a little disturbing when you're an auditor to find that $20 million fund that isn't reported in the financials and for which there is little or no documentation.
Councilman?
But the footnote disclosed to Mr. Molina related to help clear up the mystery of why it wasn't in the financials.
Do we have a copy of the original agreement that this was created that would indicate if we have any liability for these funds?
Well, the agreements have been, they've been routinely updated as IRS regulations change, so those copies, I think, should be available in the HR.
Would they indicate if the city has any liability if there's any shenanigans with the money?
So in fact,
In fact, they'll disclaim city liability.
they specifically identify, that's what the lawyers identify.
As a member of the city council, I'd not like to have the city be liable for anything, but I'd like to have the employees know what the hell's going on.
But
That's the point.
yeah, you do want to make sure that the providers are offering appropriate investments to people so that they're not going to get caught sideways with risks that they don't understand.
You know, it's a significant fringe benefit that you would want to monitor for everybody's protection.
And I'll ask Mr. Molina's question, just how long does this money sit in our system before it gets transferred to the ICMA or RC or whoever is doing the 457? Does it stay here any appreciable length of time, or is it instantaneous?
Well, as those payroll deductions are done each payroll cycle, it's sent usually the next day.
And
So
it's
this is not actual money that the city has possession of.
Right. I know, but it's just, we're talking about $20 million that all of a sudden appears in our system and then disappears out of our system, for lack of better terms.
Into a separate fund, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, at the time, the Internal Revenue Code was being changed under the 457 plan. I think it went through almost 2 or 3 changes. And at the point at which these audits were done, the Internal Revenue Code identified that if you're not legally obligated, then, you know, it's not something that you can count as creditor, available to the creditors. GASB at the time said it's not available to the city, then it's like an insurance policy. You don't keep track of all the insurance policies that are out there, so get it off the books. But
I understand all that, but when you're dealing with an agency like the IRS, it gives you tax information.
But they change it
or
really,
guidance
yeah.
and tells you it's not binding and not legally.
Until next year.
Yeah, they're not legally responsible for it. I always have a little trepidation on that. Councilmember?
In your guys' opinion, is the city in a position legally as a custodian at any time for this money?
But if you fail to transmit it to the third party,
Yeah.
you know, while it's in your possession, as the chairman.
So there would potentially be some liability on the
So there's
city.
potentially, so you have to go through a reconciliation process. You deduct it from paychecks, you send it to the third-party administrators, and you make sure that third-party administrators have credited to the accounts.
So the reconciliation totals what we deducted and what we said.
That's sort of that's a periodic.
Right, that's where our fiduciary responsibility comes in place.
Okay, Mr. Stein?
Yes. Now, how does this tie down to the liabilities owed to the LBEs for social security taxes? What is that liability?
Well, we're getting a little beyond the scope of our original discussion. We'll try and get that information for you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I want to ask Joseph. Joseph, the original providers were the IMCA, Hartford, and who was the third one?
It's
Nationwide.
Nationwide.
So they're still the 3 providers?
Yeah,
of that?
Nationwide, Mass Mutual, RCMA,
Because I need to call them and find out whatever.
Well, you know, again, in this period of open transparency and the public wanting to know all about benefits of all agencies, it's wise to be informed. Say no more. So we've already talked a lot about cappers. Our estimate is currently 2016. Management and ourselves are going to do everything possible to meet that date, but there's a possibility we may not make it. But we are, Eden said, we're going to be meeting approximately every 2 weeks with taking a break during the holidays. And we strongly endorse the new IT system. What's the next one? The next one just says the journey continues. Put it up there.
Thank you, Councilman.
We have new individuals at the top of these departments. The people that are in the departments that are still here, are any of those people still here from when these things transpired? Can someone make a decision, Mr. City Manager? Do we need to shake up and remove some people from these departments? Should somebody have the simple fact, the part that, I'm not a computer person, the part laying the large numbers of money here on software is causing me some grief. There should have been somebody ringing a bell or crying fire, the house is on fire. Somebody should have been saying something. Or am I way out of left field?
Well,
Somebody can answer.
Chair, so,
Yes.
I mean, I'll just, from a personnel perspective, there are people in this room that have been working for the city for a while. And those are personnel matters, and we, as, you know, part of this audit, we get a chance to see what happened, who made mistakes, who didn't make mistakes. I'll say, as I've always said, there's always a finance director at the top of the financial situation, and so I won't discuss here personnel matters. Certainly, we and the auditors are asking questions, and there's a huge cooperative effort here between the auditors and Beth, Christine, and Joseph to put this to an end. This is misery, let me just tell you. I mean, I sit here last night, I sit here today, and people make comments about consultants, but you guys are consultants, and you're unveiling an absolute mess that goes beyond, I'll bet, even the finance people sitting in this room, Mr. Molina, Mr. Lavery, you're going, oh my God, your heads have shaken 30 times in this meeting. We get it, and we need this to happen. This is in progress. So there's gonna be more. Dave Milliken, when he left, when we got Joseph on board, said, there's more. I'm sure that there will be other things unveiled once you get the audit going, and that's what we have. Last night there was a comment about life insurance for retirees. Cities, we'd like the auditor to look at that because we're showing subsidy coming from the city because we haven't been charging premiums as they've been going up. So there's that all over the place. And that's all we have to say here. For all of you that I appreciate, you know, all the insights, and Mr. Molina, you were here some in the 90s, I don't know if you were here 97, 98, but they could certainly tap him for he knows the answers to a lot of those questions. That we're gonna do this together. This is, I've never seen it as bad, and Mr. Milliken has been around to tell you that this quantity of errors and poor record keeping and all this exceeds some cities that found themselves in bankruptcy. We are a new team of people who are absolutely dedicated to say to this city, as Mr. Nash said last night, wouldn't it be great to see this on autopilot? Oh, you are talking about a city manager that couldn't ask for anything more. That you need to see what this looks like, and this needs to occur independent of staff running this show and telling the auditors you can't do this or can do this, and it is as painful as it gets to be your city manager sitting through all this. However, I have people in here that are dedicated to change this, and I and my team will continue to fight to make every one of these errors or poor record-keeping strategies fixed. I will say from an IT perspective, back in the beginning of the recession, I was in a city that did not have an outdated system. And we spent $8 million investing in a system because this type of thing, this isn't just an IT issue, there's a combination of things. There's clearly people, mistakes going on here too. But we have to make that decision whether to invest, whatever the system is, that's a whole process we need to go through. But it just, everything just got put on back burners. Just pretty much everything, whether you're in IT and HR or finance. That's why we focused that initial assessment on those three areas, because this failure right here hits every department. And you've heard HR, you've heard IT. So for us, we appreciate the auditors. We wish that this wasn't the story to be told at the end of the day. We are concerned the state controller may want to take a good look at us. You don't like to have that happen as your city manager? You'd like to say we've got things under control. All we can do is show what we've done and what progress we're making in fixing these and putting controls in. But the multitude, and I hear people say, why haven't you fixed that? Why haven't you fixed that? Well, this is one department. You know, think of HR when some people just got a bill for their life insurance. That's coming out of HR. That's not coming out of finance. So a lot of this happening, and we'll keep fighting. We'll keep fighting for this community, for this council. That's what these folks want, and we'll keep doing that. I had to say that because I have to run to another meeting at 10:30.
I don't want you to leave before I get finished.
We're doing this, you're coming back to city council on 15th, is that right?
Yes.
So we'll have a report at the public meeting again. If I just address one thing, because Mr. Molina said it was the first slide that said the city manager briefed the council members on December 7th. That question, I think that's very worthy an answer. I meet most of the city council members on Mondays. I don't meet all of them. We just get a chance to discuss what's going on, the agenda items. This particular item, I did get some briefing notes with them, but Mr. Lilio sent a email out to all council members the Friday before that basically stated everything I was going to cover in the briefing, and because I did not meet all the council members, I did not actually give them a briefing. That happened via an email that Joseph Lilio sent out on Friday. So
thank you. And I say that because, and I apologize, Mr. Chairman, but last night, what really frustrated me is how the previous staff did not forward audit management letters to the council. And I'm glad to see we finally have staff with integrity that are willing to share and have the trust in the council. Because when I gave this message in closed session, I had a council member jump up and literally bite my head off, and I wasn't with the city 30 days later. So I appreciate the quality of the council and the integrity of the staff to do what you guys are doing.
Yes, sir.
The other thing that, before Greg goes, the city council should rest assured that Eie+payne understands that the city council hires and fires the auditors. And so the financial statements and management letters are presented to the city council, not management. And so we are probably going to deepen the amount of people that sign the representation letter this year. And it may be a new experience for some people. But
I have two questions for the auditors and the finance department. Number one, do you have any reason to believe that the $12.3 million of deficit starting point that we work with, is that number still valid? Is it larger or smaller? Is the deficit worse than we thought? And the second question is, you've mentioned repeatedly that the HTE system is so antiquated that it can't balance the reconciliation of the bank accounts. If it was adequate to do that 17 years ago, why is it not adequate to do that now? I understand it's older technology, it's harder, but I cannot understand or comprehend what you just said.
Well, I can do things 17 years ago, I can't do that.
That's a flippant answer, it doesn't really address the question.
I know.
Yeah.
The system is adequate. HTE is not a user-friendly system. I say this from the user end of it.
It wasn't user-friendly 17 years ago either.
No.
So the question is, why can't it balance, why can't it reconcile now when it was 17 years ago?
And I don't think we have a good definitive answer for you other than the IT people are looking at it and looking at modernizing it.
I know that Mr. Perello has some comments before Greg leaves,
Yeah.
but I think we talked about this as a software issue. It is both a software and business systems issue. So good business systems that are dialed into the software can produce the results you need. But the thing that I discovered when I was here is that the lack of training of the staff, and the staff in finance, many people had never been to training. during their entire, many years with the city. So in business systems were less, didn't receive a lot of attention. It was more like who's assigned to the job and are they getting it done, maybe or maybe not.
The point is, it's not software.
So it's not purely a software issue, but places I've worked, Vallejo, California, Stockton, California, and this city all had HTE and all struggled with its inability to produce information rapidly as they were trying to assess what was going on. So it's
What about the second question regarding the 12.3? Is that still a good starting number?
Beth, we were looking at those numbers. I think that generally the budget was not affected by the kind of beginning balance check, because I was concerned about that when I first heard about it. But there were only a few cash accounts affected.
There's only one cash account.
Yeah, only one cash account, and I think it was a cash with fiscal agent, which would not be really critical.
Are you still targeting $4 million in employee concessions?
That's going to be addressed
That's on
on the
the
15th.
That would be a negotiation issue, so we probably wouldn't be comfortable saying that at this point. And I apologize for being flip, but the point was that 17 years ago when we designed something, the market was much different than what it is now in current standards and technology, what needs to be done.
Well, you have two different issues there. I know that the technology there made it hard to do it, but we were able to do it 17 years ago.
We have not done that to be appropriate time, so. Any other comments about this before we get Councilmember? You just a second. Go ahead.
Mr. Nyhoff, the concern I have, our budget was approved. We're looking for $4 million concession from negotiating groups. There's in negotiations now. One of the big issues with the negotiating, public safety specifically, has been they don't trust our numbers. And with this information, that's why I'm asking, what are we doing? Because when you alluded to me the first time, the $19 million that the controller had brought to your attention, I thank you. Thank you guys for the presentation. I like your sense of humor. I'm glad you're on board for a while.
Thank you.
And you too, because I had a chance to talk to you on the phone, and I appreciate you taking my call. But when we have a large segment of the public believing public safety, that we are not presenting the straight up numbers, and the council finds this, that's why I'm not feeling comfortable and warm and fuzzy about this. And if there needs to be more changes, as 1/5 of your boss, I mean, we're expecting you to do and equating to this, there's a guy driving the ship, and there's guys doing the navigation, but if the guys in the bottom aren't feeding coal into the burners, this ain't going nowhere. And if the guys in the bottom don't know their job, it's up to somebody, and I think it's you, to make sure they know their job, or we get somebody that does know their job. That's what I want to say.
Can I just follow up on this? Because I think there is a really, if you were to sit and listen to this today, one would do exactly as Mr. Miller said, and as you said, Councilmember Perello, is, are our numbers any good, what we're working off of right now? I think that's a very legitimate question, and I think that there was a comment, I don't know if it was crystal clear here, that there was one cash account. So I would like a little stronger statement from finance, if you can possibly do that, saying, where do we see ourselves? We proposed a budget, we had a beginning balance, we had revenue expectations, expense expectations. There are people challenging all over the place our records, which clearly there's no doubt why they would and why people would, but we are getting to places where bank reconciliations are now being completed, trial balances are now finishing up. So, Mr. Lilio, once again, and is there anybody who would say in this room, we don't really know where we are financially, or are we, quite comfortable that what we've projected out in this year's budget is accurate?
Absolutely, and during the budget development for the current year, 15-16, there was this anticipated $12.8 million budget shortfall, and we had to have the Measure O loan come in to backfill the general fund. So it's a $16 million general Measure O loan to the general fund. I presented something on November 17th, which was the first quarterly update, showed that we're pretty much on target for the first quarter with that 15-16 budget projection. Looks like everything that, all the work that Eie+payne has been doing, the work that my staff has been doing moving forward, looks like we are pretty much on target with that 15-16 budget. There might be some minor adjustments, less than 1% as far as the revenues are concerned. We'll be presenting something January 26th, mid-year budget adjustment and review. So as far as, you know, the general fund is concerned, we are looking very close to what the adopted budget was. And without that $16 million loan from the measure of fund, the general fund 101 would have been in the hole. And that's still solid.
We'll go to Mr. Stein first, and I'll come back to you.
The city's received numerous awards for its financial records. I would recommend symbolically we return those awards, just as a measure of symbolic, because I don't think we deserve the awards if the financial previous statement is so bad. The second issue, as the auditors are meeting with city staff bi-weekly, or whatever the case may be, are there members of the Fiscal Policy Task Force meeting participating in those meetings as well? And I think at least one member of that meeting should participate in these conferences, just so as a representative of city council, they know what's going on, because the past practices apparently weren't in a loop.
Okay, thank you. Your comments are noted, Mr. Molina.
Yeah, just for the auditor's knowledge, Measure O is not a special revenue. It did not get 66% of the vote. It is part of the general fund. And I really wish in a way staff would make it clear to the public that you can't borrow money from one pocket and put it into another. It's part of the general fund. What you're in essence doing is you're telling council that, I'm sorry, you may have made commitments, but you never got the votes necessary to set this aside as a special revenue fund. Therefore, by law, it's available for all obligations of the general fund. Now, that's something the council simply has to bite off on, say, hey, sorry, we're misleading you guys, it's not a special fund. We wanted to dedicate it for certain things, but we don't have the legal authority to do that. It's going to go to the creditors of the general fund, whatever they may be. It's not, I would just like to make sure that the public understands, and I know there are members of the public that really feel this was a special fund committed by the council to do only these special things with, you know, the different watershed areas and whatever, and that's laudable. But the fact of the matter is, it didn't get the vote that let it be segregated as a special revenue fund. It is in the general fund. The auditors know that.
Mr. Chair, I wanted to comment back to Greg and acknowledge that we will do everything in our power to put everyone's mind at ease by Tuesday, and we will be working obviously with Joseph and Christine and their staff, with the thought being that we can put the catch behind us by Tuesday. So that's our goal.
Thank you, Mr. Now, final comments?
Thank you, and I just appreciate the comments, and I do think Mr. Molina, absolutely great point. We do fully recognize it's in the general fund. It's one of the reasons you don't find yourself at bankruptcy levels, because Measure O is in the general fund, absolutely, and will continue being in there. And I think that was just a commitment I recommended council made, that the voters assume some certain things. They didn't assume it to be bailout money, and so we do have a budget to pay that back over 10 years. I think I just appreciate everybody what we're doing. I think keeping in mind that we are listening to the auditors. Every time they find something, these folks are right on it, working it, because we know we're at a very difficult financial situation right now. We are in the general fund, and candidly, wastewater isn't far behind when it comes to true concerns about where we sit. So without a doubt, we need the relationship, but there's the independence, and that's what auditing's all about. Internal audits, like we talked about last night, that's what that is, to make us better. And I'm sorry, I told the council member, I'm sorry for this, that this is the situation the city finds itself in. It is an embarrassment to the leadership of this organization to find it in all sorts of places. We have chosen, there's several of us in this room today that have chosen the city of Oxnard to be our place that we desire to work to do this. Did I see this when I started? I did not. Do I have the same commitment I did the day that this council hired me? I do, and so do others. Sound like a marriage vow. Bottom line to it is, look, we're gonna fight as long as we can, and we just appreciate what all of you say, but understand it does personally wear on you, just even having internal conversations about this stuff. So hang in there. Some of you have said it for years. Councilmember Perello reminds me, I think every Monday that we meet, that it's been a long time. People have been bringing issues up a long time. Even when I talk to the community, they're like, oh, thank you, we knew something was there, and now it's like out there. It's magnitudes more than what was certainly anticipated, and we're dedicated to do it. That's why we have 128 things listed up there. That's why the audit report's gonna come up with more recommendations, probably than other audits you ever gave. Maybe not, I don't know who all you've given audits to. We're gonna just keep plugging away at them. We can't get them all at the same time, folks. Absolutely can't
David
get
led
them.
him in top 10, that's for sure.
Can't get them all at the same time. So sorry for that. I do have people that I'll have to stand up to, so I'll
Mr. Velasquez?
back.
Yeah, I'd just like to voice my opinion regarding the financial disaster that we're in here today. This can happen overnight. And I think everyone has to take responsibility, starting with the present, past, council members, city managers, and staff, department heads. Everyone played a role for us to be where we're at today. They were negligent. There were good people we had. One, Mr. Molina, perfect example. He tried to do the right thing, and he got fired. I attended a task force meeting here a year or two ago when we had the auditors from Belt, and I had shared some concerns based on their past history. The council member said, well, we can't judge them because of what happened to Bell. Well, consequently, that played a role as to where we're at. My observation was that I felt that the city council felt too comfortable, and I brought up that point. You cannot get too complacent with the auditor, the firm that you hire. You can't get too complacent because you need to stay on top of that auditing firm. And at least that's my perception. You can't get too comfortable. Another big player was the city manager. The city manager has a responsibility to oversee his staff, but he can't tie their hands either. He has to understand that there's staff members that are bringing issues to that need to be addressed. He has to listen to them and act accordingly. So my view is, with due respect, I haven't really put 100% my faith and trust in this firm because of what's happened in the past. I will be keeping an eye as to what you do, because can history repeat itself? Absolutely. I only hope that it doesn't repeat itself with your firm, the city manager, and the council members. So I will not give you a free rein per se. I put my whole faith in you because I do. I would be lying to you if I said I did. I don't. Because well, this is why we're here today. So again, everybody has to take responsibility from the top to the bottom. And this will play out eventually, and let's see where we're at. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Sorry about the small room, by the
So
way.
I think we're at a point where we're gonna adjourn because we have gone through the agenda. Our next meeting will be January 13th at 9 a.m. You know, we'll be in this room or downstairs, but we'll do some. Thank you all for your participation. Mr. Lilly, where are we gonna put this on our website somewhere?
I'll add it to the website.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.